Have you heard of the film Rope? It's a 1948 film directed by Alfred Hitchcock. He also directed such films as Strangers on a Train, Psycho, and Rear Window, and he's pretty well regarded as one of the most influential directors of the 20th century. Rope centers on two men, Brandon and Philip, who after murdering David Kentley, host a dinner party with plenty of guests. These guests include
Janet Walker, Henry Kentley, the boy's father, his aunt, Mrs. Atwater, his best friend, Kenneth Lawrence, a housekeeper named Mrs. Wilson, and the two who were responsible for everything.
The film opens with Brandon and Philip strangling David. Look at the way they stand next to each other afterwards. Okay, look, I'm not going to keep you guessing. I'm just going to come out and say it. I believe that Rope invites its audience to queerly read the film. Although the film never explicitly says these two men are gay, homosexual lovers who have sex and are clearly in love, I don't think it's particularly important to say that up front, nor is it a knock on the film. This film came out in 1948. This means that it debuted under the Hays Code. From 1934 to 1968, the Hays Code strangled Hollywood. Sort of. It was a self-imposed restriction to prevent outside entanglements and regulations, but nevertheless, it forbid any display of homosexuality, sex, or any sort of degeneracy that your grandparents would swear up and down never existed until Obama was elected in 2008. In all seriousness, this means that throughout the film's 80-minute runtime, none of this is mentioned. No homosexuality, no gayness, no nothing. So, how can we say that Rope is queer? Well, directors and audiences either on purpose or accidentally are able to derive queer subtext from films made during this era through the process of encoding and decoding. Encoding occurs during the production of the film, and decoding occurs during the reception of the film. As discussed on page 31 of Barbara Minnell's Queer Cinema, the murder binds Brandon and Philip to each other and functions for unspeakable gay sex. During the aftermath of the murder, their dialogue sounds, well, like what people say after having sex.
Don't.
We've got to see if there's
I know. But not just yet. Let's stay this way for a minute.
Another interesting point made by Minnell in her book is that Philip is the artistic one. This is a code for gay, and he becomes more feminine as he acts more hysterical. Brandon, on the other hand, maintains control of the situation, talking to Philip in a more masculine way.
He's the one man who might appreciate this from our angle, the artistic one. That's what's exciting.
I'm glad it excites you. It frightens me. I know,
I
but
suggest you keep your voice down. It would have been too easy with the others, Philip, and too dull. As for Rupert, I once thought of inviting him to join us.
Why didn't you? The more the merrier.
Because he hasn't the nerve. Oh, intellectually, he could have come along. He's brilliant, but he's a little too fastidious. He could have invented and he could have admired, but he never could have acted. That's where we're superior, Philip. We have courage.
Additionally, they both refer to each other as we throughout the film. Also, without explanation, Brandon and Philip both live together. This isn't explained or addressed, and it's definitely an interesting point favoring a queer reading. The fact that it's left in an unanswered state invites the audience to read it as such. Also, if the viewer of the film goes on a rope believing that the two characters are gay, Minnell argues on the next page that the film's double talk mimics the coded language of gay men at the time. We've already discussed the double talk example of them committing a murder, and that being coded is a homosexual act, but there are other cues as well. Okay, so let's say that the film invites a gay reading. That doesn't mean that the film supports homosexuality. Minnell argues on page 32 that Rope discredits homosexuality by connecting it to a violent death. This association of homosexuality and death is common in media made during the Hays Code era and plays into a larger societal idea that homosexuality is a sinful act. But for a gay audience member, does that actually matter? Is representation, even if done in a way like this, a good thing? Maybe it would help if we looked at Sylvia, Scarlett. Sylvia, Scarlett is a 1935 film directed by George Cukor. Although it wasn't publicly known at the time, Cukor is a gay man, and reading the film now, his role in the creation of his film likely served as a way to implement queerness more directly. Of course, queerness is already overflowing in the actual film.
And I won't be silly. Huh? I'll be a boy and rough and hard. I won't care what I do.
What are you doing? Stop that!
Don't worry, I'm ready for anything.
Here's the basic setup for the plot. Sylvia, Scarlett, and her father Henry run away to England to flee debt collectors. But how do they disguise themselves? Well, Sylvia immediately suggests that she should dress up as a man and change her name to Sylvester. In Alexander Doty's Whose Text Is It Anyway, he brings up Katharine Hepburn's androgynous appearance. On page 36, Doty describes the critical reception. Critics noted that the film, despite being a commercial failure, revealed the interesting fact that Katharine Hepburn is better looking as a man than as a woman. And honestly, I totally agree. Not only is she a handsome boy, but she is also an invitation for transsexual and bisexual readings that were taboo at the time.
Yeah. Well, I put the money on the north.
You what?
Oh, there's plenty of room for both of us here. Come on, get your pajamas. Let's get curled up.
But
What?
well, I'm afraid I snore.
Oh, well, I'll cure you that. I'll give you a clump on the head every time I hear you.
Yeah, but I kick too.
Ah, never mind about that. Hey, you know it's a big nippy tonight. Hey, you'll make a proper little hot water bottle.
No, I'm stuffy. It's dizzy. Oh.
Yeah, what's the matter with you? I took a bath last Saturday night.
As an audience, we literally watch her character be kissed on the lips by a woman, awkwardly turned down sharing a bed with a man named Michael Fane, and plenty of other queer encounters that are awkward. The audience views these interactions not as queer, but as comical. However, a queer reading of Sylvia Scarlett simply acknowledges the film for what it is, a multi-dimensional queer text that explores queerness in a way that few films have from that time period. The film gains added dimensions when you know that Cary Grant's real-life bisexuality could be playing a major role, and that the film invites all spectators to experience queer feelings. This is an example of a film where the queer connections are clear and in front. So, to go back to Rope, I think that just because the film's director, Alfred Hitchcock, isn't outwardly or secretly queer, or that the actors weren't seen doing anything inherently queer, makes the film any less viable as a queer text. The film-audience relationship relies on the audience being able to decode from the film, not just the encoding from the director. Decoding invites the audience to draw their own conclusions regardless of the intent of the people responsible for making the film. So, if an audience is able to draw a connection with a queer character, or just a regular character that maybe does something queer or invites a queer interaction, whether it's intended or not, maybe that's just the most important part of all of this.